All right, a couple things as we get started here. First, please remember, and you will have lab days at least most of the period, if not all period tomorrow, and all period on Thursday. All right, and Friday is going to be a pretest, but if you need to work on your labs, then you can. But Friday, by the end of the class, your labs are due, your homework is due. Now, we did most of that stuff as a class to get people acclimated, okay? We did not go through the written tests. I'm going to ask that you try those yourselves, all right? So that's due by the end of the day. Last Thursday, we did the hands-on test for chapters 1 through 3. Friday, I thought was going to be a lab day, but we instead went over that C# BMI console program. There was no class yesterday. Today, we're going to go over the C# BMI GUI program. And if there's time, I want to lecture on as much of 4 to 5 as possible. Why? So that the next 2 days in here, Thursday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you can have them as labs the entire period. All right. Friday, again, I will give you some kind of a pretest. I will give you time to work on it. Then I will go over it. Next Monday, which is the 25th, we will be having our next hands-on test. Any questions on that? And if you think about it, please remind me, because I want to show you when I get done with this. We're going to do the GUI now, but when I get done with this, I'm going to show you all the steps to push that thing out to GitHub. So if any of you were having any problems, hopefully that'll help you with any problems that you had. All right. So last time we were here, last time we got together, we created this. All right. And when it comes up, it said enter a height between 12 and 96 or quit now. All right. So if I put in 72 and 111, it says you're underweight. You get the idea. So we did that last time. I don't think there's really any need to go over that problem anymore. All right. The one we're going to build today, and I added a little thing in here. So I added an image just so you could see how to bring an image in. All right. So this is the one that we're going to create. Hopefully you notice when you look at it, it's fairly simple looking. There's a title, 1, 2, 3, 4 labels, 1, 2, 3, 4 text boxes, and 2 of the 4 text boxes, the one with the BMI and the one with the BMI status, they're both read-only. All right. There are 3 buttons, and again, something that's called a picture box, which holds an image. All right. So what I'd like you to do, and I'm going to do the same thing, is we're going to bring up the last time, again, when we created this one, we also created a thing called BMI GUI, if you remember that. So we created 2 projects. I'd like you to bring up the BMI GUI, please, right now. And then I'm going to give you a couple minutes to build the interface. Again, you're not turning this in, so the colors, etc. you use are up to you. But what I'd like you to do, just because it'll make it easier for you, is again, this is a label. So I called this label title. This was called text box height. This was called text box weight. This was called text box BMI. This was called text box BMI status. In fact, I think I made that all caps. It doesn't really matter that much. Status. This was called button exit. This is called button clear. This, you actually create you use a control that's called a picture box. Did you hear me? It's in your list of controls, and I didn't even change the name. I just called it picture box 1. You want to give it a name? You can't. It doesn't really matter. This should be called label height. This should be called label weight. This should be called label BMI. That should be called, come on, label BMI status. And this is called button calculate. Now I'm asking a question because I'm ignorant of what I'm about to ask you. If I give you 10 minutes, can you all build that? Questions from anybody? All right, then make sure it's in your BMI. I think we call this one BMI GUI. And when you get done, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to build it, but I'm going to leave it all up there right now. I do not have this. I'm going to rebuild this because I built this one separately. Hopefully you can read all that well enough. Sorry if you're a little further back. I didn't write it all that big, so. Again, especially you guys in the back, if you're having a hard time reading the names of anything, just ask and I'll be glad to try to tell it to you. So.
What does the V4 text box label say?
The which one?
I think it says BMI status.
Yeah, there's a text box BMI status.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's on the thing.
Uh-huh. If you care to, the size of my form was 436, comma 715. If you want it to be the same size, you're not turning this in, so it really doesn't matter.
Text box say?
This one? Bottom text box?
Yeah.
Text box BMI status. All right, even if you're still going, I think you're going to be able to see me fill the stuff in, and hopefully that'll work out okay. So I'm just going to bring up my form and resize it. So the size again will be 436, 715, just so it looks like the other one. So there's the size of the form. Again, I like to give my form some color. You don't have to do that, but I'm going to change the back color, use that light purplish. There we go. So that's that. And I'm going to start dropping the controls onto here. All right, so I want to change the name of my form. I made my form BMI. So there's that. And I did say a little for the text. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I'm going to put in here BMI, how about C# BMI program GUI for GUI. All right. Then I'm going to come in and start dropping in my labels. So there's my first label. I call that one label title. Title. All right. And I just said in here like BMI GUI program or something like that. It doesn't matter. BMI GUI program. Okay, there it is. Of course, it's got to be much bigger. I think I made it about 20, bold, Arial. That'll work. Okay, so there's my title, BMI GUI program. I'm going to quickly, I made 4 copies of my labels, so I can put those in here. These are going to be smaller, of course, but that's fine. All right, so for each one of these, I'm going to change the size. I'm going to cut it down to about 16. That should work. That looks good. All right, so this first one is going to be called label height, and it's just going to say height. The second one is going to be called label weight, and it's going to say weight. The third one is going to say just BMI, and it's going to be called label BMI. And the fourth one is going to say BMI status, and it'll be called label BMI status. There we go. All right, I'm going to just jack with these a real little bit here, and that is I'm going to set that auto size to false just so they're all the same size. I'm going to cut this down quite a bit. That looks good. And I'm going to set the text align to middle right. That looks good. That's about what I want. And I'm going to start putting in my text boxes. There's my first one. I'm going to resize it right away. And I'm going to set the text size to it also. So there's that. All right, now I'm going to set the names of each one of these. So this one again will be text box height. This one will be text box weight. This one will be text box BMI. And the last one will be text box BMI status. All right, I can already tell looking at this, I want these to be a little bit wider, especially for the status. All right, then I want my 3 buttons. Looks about right. And the first one will be button calculate. And it will say calculate. The second one will be button clear. And it'll say clear. And the last one will be button exit. And it'll say exit. It's a little small, the text on those buttons, so I'm going to make that a little bigger. I think the other ones were 16 bold. Arial. Do the same thing there. And did I not spell calculate right, or did I make it too small? No, this has got to be a little bigger. All right, and then finally the picture box. Let's throw that out here. It's going to be empty for most of the program. We won't do that until the end, but I'll stretch it out a little bit, make it a little bigger. All right, now I'm going to quickly check here. Let's see. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. So I'll have to fix that. That looks about right. So I'm going to lock my controls. Okay. Any questions on any of that stuff? It doesn't look perfect, but it sort of lines up when you look at it here. Any questions on this? Anybody? All right, let me erase all the stuff I put up here. All right. Now, not that I have to do this, but let's talk about some stuff that you typically want to do as you start up a GUI program. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click inside of my height box. If you look on the screen here, I'm clicking in my height box and I'm going to view tab order. And I want this to be 0, that to be 1. So these two are, in just a minute, these two here are going to both be read-only. So 0, 1, 2 for the first button, 3 for the second button, 4 for the third button. Then the rest don't really matter, but I'll say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, but 0 here and 1 here, and then 2, 3, 4 here. I guess you can't even get the focus in here, so that one doesn't even show. So that's the first thing I'm doing. I'm going to do another view tab order to turn that off. Then I'm going to go and click on my form and go to accept button, and I'm going to set that one to button calculate. I'm going to go to my clear button, all right, but I'm clicking on my form, and I want to go down to cancel button, and I want to set that one to button clear. Finally, I want to click on here, and I want to go to Windows Start Position, or just Start Position, and I want to change it to center screen. Now I'm going to save, and it's not at all operational, but I'm going to run it. Oh, not there, I'm not. But set it as my start project. And I'm going to run it. And it pretty much looks the way I want it to look. All right. Again, not perfect, but it's not too bad right now either. All right. Couple more things. Again, you don't have to do this, but this is what I did. I'm going to highlight all 4 of these text boxes here. They're all highlighted now. And I'm going to set the text align property to center. I think it looks a little nicer when you run the program. You don't have to do that. All right, and then finally, I want to take these 2 text boxes and make them read-only, the BMI and the BMI status. So I want to go to the read-only property here, and I can either click on it, click the down arrow, and choose true, or just double-click to turn it to true. I don't like that gray, so I'm just going to make it a little bit darker shade of purple than the one that's in there now. All right. And I think I'm ready to get going. Does anybody have any questions on anything I put in here? Anything? All right. So we're going to do the calculate last, but I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on the clear, and I'm going to click on the exit. Okay. The first thing, I accidentally have this label title click. Again, you don't want to just delete it now. I want to go back in here and click on my label title, and then click on this lightning bolt and see where it says title click. I just want to remove that. As soon as I remove that, that should now remove it. It's not in my code listing anymore. All right. So, time to write some code. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my exit button. I'm going to write my exit button code. I'm going to use the same code I gave you guys in class. Oops. Make that a little smaller. Now, I'm going to leave this up here, but I want to run it and see if this works. All right, I just want to verify that this works. Now, when I click exit, exit program now, exit program. If I say no, I stay there. If I say yes, it exits. So take a second and write this up, please. And then save it, run it, make sure your exit button is then functional. And next, we're going to slide up a little bit. We'll do the clear button next. By now, does anybody have any questions on that? What that's doing, etc.? Any questions? Remember, I'm going to run this. Don't worry about it. I'll remove this. I'll get this out of the way. There. But if I click exit, and you look at this, you should now be able to tell exit program now. That's this. Exit program in caps. That's this. Yes, no. That's this. Icon question. That's that. So you should be able to see all of it and see exactly how that pairs up. And you're going to find that virtually every GUI program that we do for the rest of this semester that has an exit button in, that's the exact code I'm going to put in. All right? I think it's the same exact thing that I sent all of you. And application.exit there is a graceful, typical exit. You may or may not remember when we exited from the console program, we did an environment.exit and we put the number 0 in there. That's how you typically exit from a console program. All right. Has everybody had a chance to put this in that wants to? All right, then next, if you look up on the screen here, for the clear button, when I click that, there's 5 things I want to have happen. I want to clear this, 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 and I want the cursor to go back here. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, and that's exactly what I'm about to do. So, text box height dot text equal double quote text box weight dot text equals double quote text box BMI dot text equals double quote text box BMI status. Whoops, BMI. What did I call that? Hold on. I don't know what I called that one. Maybe I didn't name that. Text box status. I wanted it to be BMI status, but it's not that that's a big thing. It really and truly is not. But since I'm trying to be consistent here, text box BMI status. Okay. So go back to here. Text box BMI status dot text equals double quote. Let me move this over. And then finally, text box height dot focus. I'm hoping by now that makes enough sense to you that you understand what's happening in each line. All right. Now, I mentioned this to you earlier in the semester, but just so you see this, I'm going to put a little code in there. I'm not going to keep it. But some people, you'll also see it typed in like this, string.empty. You'll also see it put in like that. I don't see the need to put it in like that when this is only 2 characters, but that's just me. All right. Everybody's different when the way they do that. All right. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to run it again. Now, these 2 boxes are both read-only. You know that already, so I can't put stuff in there anyway. But I can put stuff in here, and I can click clear. Notice this is where my cursor is. I click clear, they both cleared, and my cursor went back there. So that appears to work. So my clear appears to be working, and my my exit appears to be working. Please look up on the screen, because I'm going to put something in here again. Remember, the other thing I set was my cancel button. I set that to exit, so I'm just going to hit the escape key. That also works. All right. I can't check the calculate yet because we haven't written that. But this is what we put in thus far. All right. I'll leave it up there for just a second, just in case you're a little typing deficient and you need that. All right. Then in just a couple minutes, we're going to write the code for the calculate button. All right. Before we do that, we're going to put in our global variables, and we're going to put in our global constants, etc. We're going to put all that stuff in. Plus, just like we did last time, I'm going to put, comment this up the wazoo, just so you can see if you ever had to go back and take a look at it. Now, in my opinion, you may or may not agree with this, but I think that what we're doing now is going to be harder than the test you're going to take next Monday. Again, you may not agree with that once you take the test. I don't know. But all I'm saying is if you understand this, that should really enhance between this and the pretest that you'll do on Friday. All right, you should be set for the test next Monday. At least that's my hope. All right. Everybody caught up? I mean, if you're not, say something, because I don't want to go on.
That's just text box height, or no, the last one, height.
This is text box height dot focus. All right, everybody's caught up then? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back up to the top of my program, and right underneath where it says initialize component up here, and there's that curly brace, I'm going to hit enter a couple times, so I'm right there, and I'm going to put in declare and initialize global constants. And I've got about 7 of them. It's going to be set up the same way we did the last program. Oops, did it wrong. Try that again. Let me get rid of this one. All right, min height, min weight, max weight. That's a good start. I'm also going to declare and initialize 5 global variables.
What's the first constant double?
This one, min OPT. That's for the minimum optimal weight. And I don't think I need this one that I put in here. I think there's only 4 that we need. We'll find out. from the last program, does everybody understand the meaning of each one of those constants and the meaning of each one of those variables? You know, because if you have any questions, this is your time to ask. Questions? All right, so I'm going to come down to the calculate button. So we're going to put that code in right now. I'm going to start with a comment. The minimum obese, 30.0. Sure. Now there's going to be a lot of code that's going to be similar, if not identical, to the way we wrote the code for the console program. All right, just so you know that. I'm going to rewrite it anyway, but I do want to mention one thing. Even if you're still typing, please just stop for a second and look up on the screen because I want you to see something. When we had the console program and we wrote this, hopefully you remember this, our driver was basically put inside of a loop, which allowed us to keep going and going and going and going, etc. All right, we're not doing it like that. Typically, you do not do it like that because what we're doing here is normally, not always, but normally when you have a console program, the program is more in control. But when you have a GUI, you're in control. So we're not going to have a loop here, is what I'm telling you. So let me close this. We don't need it anymore. And I don't need that either. But when we come in here, we're not going to write a loop in here. Instead, I'm going to use one of those if statements that we talked about in this chapter, and you'll see again. All right. Now, you can call this whatever you want, but I want to show you what not to call it. So don't type this. Just watch for a second if you would. It'd be nice if I could put in here bool, continue, and set it equal to true. But notice that doesn't work because continue is a key word in the language. So I cannot use it in a way that it's not meant to be used. And that's what I'm doing here. That's why I'm getting the underline in red. So I usually just call mine keep going. I mean, to me at least, maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, but that's pretty indicative of what we want to do. We either want to keep going in the program or we don't want to keep going. Does that make sense? And I assume when you start to run the program, you want to keep going. That's what I'm assuming. All right. So I'm going to come down here, and again, we're just going to start to write the driver. We're going to write probably, I don't know, about 10 or 15 lines, and it'll almost be time for a break then, because I want to go over it. I want to make sure you understand everything we're doing here. So remember, I can now, if I want to check and see if keep going is equal to true, please look up on the screen. If I want to check to see if that variable is true or not, I can do it two ways. Here's the harder way of doing it. But it works just fine. But, you know, so you can do it like that. It works just fine. But that's too much work. Because what happens is that's the same as this. So I'm going to use that every time. If it makes more sense to you to put the double equals with a true, do that. Hopefully by the end of the semester, you won't be doing that anymore. All right, but if that makes more sense to you, by all means, please do it. So, since I want to keep going, the first thing I'm going to want to do is what? I'm going to set keep going equal to input height. All right, I'm going to get a bunch of red stuff in here, so don't worry about that. Okay, now what this says is I'm going to call a routine called input height. Input height must return true or false because I'm stuffing it in to keep going. All right, so if I want to keep going, I do this. Otherwise, else, return. In other words, if I don't want to keep going, I quit. Return, notice it's not returning anything because what's the return type up there? Void. So I just put the word return in there. So if I don't want to keep going, I'm gone. I'm out. All right? So, again, I'm going to get a bunch of red in here because I want to write this again now. Because now I'm going to say if keep going. Well, remember, the next thing I want to do then is I want to say keep going equals input weight. Else, again in here, return. And again, I'm going to keep getting those red things until I write these. We'll write those after our break. But what I'm more concerned with you, hopefully at least, understanding is this is saying in here, I've got this Boolean variable that I set to true. Now, if I didn't give it a value, it's either going to have a value of null, which means unknown, or it will be false. So I'm specifically creating this variable. Remember, that's declaring the variable right there. So if I just said bool keep going, semicolon, that would be a variable declaration. This is a variable declaration and a variable initialization. Questions on that? So if it's set to true, call input height. And input height is going to have to return true if it's a valid height and false if it's an invalid height. Did you hear what I said? This will return true if the height's valid, meaning I want to keep going since I got a valid height. If it returns false, I'm not going to want to keep going. So down here, I'm going to end up returning. And then I do the same thing with the weight. So I'm getting those errors because I haven't written input height yet. I haven't written input weight yet. They'll be very similar to what we wrote for the console, but when there is an error, instead of printing on the screen with a right line, we're going to create a message box. And we're going to have one routine we're going to write for our message box, one routine that'll print out 4 different message boxes, depending on what information we pass it in. You'll see that again after the break. All right. So if I get down to this point, if I do get down to this point, and that's true, I put in a height that was valid. So I put in a height that was between 12 and 96. If I get down to here, then my weight was valid. So I've now got a valid height and a valid weight. Make sense to everybody? Questions? All right, so if I get down here, then I want to say if, keep going. Now, I know I've got a valid height and I know I've got a valid weight, so I'm going to call calculate BMI. Then I'm going to call calculate BMI status. And then I'm going to call display all. And I'm getting errors for all of these because they have not yet been written. All right. And if it's false, so else, guess what? You've seen it before. Return. All right. So going through this a step at a time. I'll come right back to it. So if you're still keying it in, but I want to make sure you get this. First of all, what is this? Typically, it's referred to something like a program continue flag. So what I'm telling you is quite often Boolean variables are called flags. All right, not always. It depends. You know, call it whatever you want. So I'm checking here if it is set equal to true, and it is because I set it up here. So I'm always going to call input height. If input height returns true, then keep going is still going to be true. So it'll call input weight. If up here, if input height returned false, then it's going to just return. All right. Then I come down to here. And I set keep going equal to input weight. If input weight returns true, meaning it's a valid weight, now I know I have a valid height. Now I know I have a valid weight. So if that's the case, I'm going to go down here. If it returned false, then I'm just going to return. But if it returned true, now I can calculate my BMI. I can calculate my BMI status. I can calculate my display all. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. All we're going to do is we're going to put in what are typically referred to in here as stubs, just so we can get these errors to go away. All right. So I'm going to quickly write this. Private bool, input height, and all I'm, whoops, I don't know what happened there, but all I'm going to do in there is just return true. Okay? We're going to write that later, so don't worry about it. And then underneath that, I'm going to put in private bool input weight. And again, I'm also just going to return true. So I've got those. Look on the screen, please. Even if you're still typing, just stop for a second. Look on the screen. Do you notice how those errors, all those squigglies went away? They should. If they didn't go, if they didn't go away, you spelled the two differently. Just so you know. Then you spelled it differently between here and down here. So now I've got calculate BMI status, and display all. So I'm going to quickly just put in stubs for those. Private, void, calculate, BMI, and all I have to put in here is curly braces. That's it for now. And then underneath that, I'm going to put in private, void, calculate, BMI status. And again, I'm just going to put in curly braces. Now what you should see, look on the screen, please. Notice those are both gone, those errors. So the only thing that's left here is display all. So private, void, display all. And again, so all my error messages are now gone. The program functions in that clear works and exit works. Calculate doesn't do a flaming thing yet, but it will. So once you've got all that stuff written, I've got 8:56. Let's take a break. All right. And some of you are still typing, so let's come back at 9:15 and we'll pick it up and we'll write those routines. All right. Does it make sense to you just like we did last time? Pretty much input height and input weight are going to be identical. But we're going to have to change the H's that we put in height to W's for weight. All right. So once we got those done, the calculate BMI is literally one line of code. And the status is just going to be an if statement. If this, do this, else do this, etc. Does that make sense? Because it's set up the same way that we set up the one that we did for the console. All right. Questions on what we've done so far? Yes.
So it's not so much a question, but so for the private bool, right above that, what do I type? Thank you.
And like I said, we can make sure you save this before you take your break. All right. And you can run it, but clicking the calculate button won't do anything right now. Nothing at all. It's calling the routines, but since the routines aren't doing anything other than returning true or false or whatever, it's not doing anything. Have you caught back up, Adam? Can I move this down? Okay. So again, you want to get a break in, please do.
Everything is still red.
What's that?
Everything's still red.
All right, well, I can take a look, just a second.